Hello, hi, welcome to another episode of Analytical by Design's interview series. If you don't know who we are a Canadian not-for-profit organization focusing on humanizing technology, data, and design. My name is Michelle. I'm really excited to be here with you today because I invited a good friend of mine, Windy Natriavi, to join our show. And before I start, I just want to also apologize. It really took us a while to do this interview because we were so busy with the digital healthcare event that just finished in May. We invited doctors and practitioners in technology and data to talk about the innovations happening in the pandemic, and as well as we heard some amazing, heartwarming story about how frontline medical staff and went above and beyond and organized and self-organized for the pandemic relief. So if you're interested and check this out here, I'm gonna put in a button maybe somewhere here. Okay, without further ado, let's talk about today's interview. So this interview was recorded actually a while ago. So, as you can see, it was still pretty cold. I'm really excited about this interview. First of all, Windy Natriavi joined us all the way from Indonesia, and she's such a good friend of mine. I knew her since we were in undergrad. It's like a really long time ago. And let me just give you a little bit brief introduction of who she is. So Windy Natriavi currently is a co-founder and chief product officer of an impact financing company called AwanTunai. So prior to entrepreneurship, Windy used to work as head of growth of GoJek. So for many of you, if you are not familiar with Southeast Asia tech scene, GoJek is a unicorn company in Southeast Asia, and it is actually the first, I would say, unicorn company in Indonesia. It's equivalent, I would say, to Uber there. So Windy started as founding GoLife, which is a subsidiary under GoJek. After successful few years working there, and then she was brought back to the main company GoJek as a head of growth. After extremely successful career in a tech unicorn, she decided to follow her passions and founded this company AwanTunai to focus on unbanked merchants in Indonesia. The reason why I'm really excited about this story is I always feel like people are having a successful career in a big company, especially unicorns, and you really don't have that much incentive to leave. And I was really curious about her decision, and I was also very curious about what really motivated her to try something on her own. So if you are also interested like me and keep on watching, we will make sure we answer the question like how she got started, how she become a tech person when she barely have any experience in technology, and how later on, after successful launch of a GoLife, which is a subsidiary of GoJek, and how she become the head of growth at GoJek, and then afterwards, what really motivated her to found her own company. So stay tuned, and if you are interested in skipping certain part of the interview and just want to know the part interests you the most, and please use the progress bar here, and we'll see you soon.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for the generous and kind welcome. Really been a very hectic kind of thing going on with me here. I'm pretty sure you are too, but I think a lot of it has taught me opportunities that I haven't even thought of before. So it's a lot to take in. Yes, for sure. I used to be part of McKinsey, which I think at that time, when I graduated, and even up to this day, it's still a lot. It's a really great place for people to go after their graduate. And the same reason actually is the one that drove me into leaving GoJek back then to build my own company. And the reason was that I wanted to do something and that can actually be meaningful to a lot of people, and building something that scares me, I would say. So I think I spent 2.5 years in GoJek. I started when Nadim, the then CEO, kind of like asked me to join. It was really my first time, even trying out entrepreneurship, let alone tech, was really just not in my roadmap, quote unquote, right? And the interesting thing was, it scared me, and I felt like, okay, if it scares me, then that means there's an opportunity for growth. And I then went on to build three products, the Go Life products: on-demand massage, on demand cleaning, on demand beautician, all within like 4.5 months. Little did I know by then that was actually a target that Nadeem didn't expect me to build, but he was just, okay, you know what, she's still young, let me just try to put some arbitrary number. And it was the first time that it really taught me that wow, you can actually achieve something that you think is possible, even though it's actually not something that it was normal. So I really love that feeling of creating something that challenged me, even though I was, to be honest, right, scared doing it, whether I was doing it right, whether I was leading my team right, building the right products in the right way. So it was a lot of scary things and a lot of doubts. But then, that feeling of actually overcoming that fear and doubt. And so,
yeah, it's actually really interesting. So you basically being thrown into the situation, you had to figure everything out yourself, right? You don't have a tech background, right? You're a consultant, and you learn to be an operator, and then you had to grow 3 vertical in 4 months, right? So what was going through in your mind at the time?
Yeah. So what was going on in my mind, I had to do this kind of fear setting for me, almost on a daily basis. So, when this fear, what I call my fear setting. So whenever a fear creeps in, I have to go into these 3 kind of like steps. First, is this fear even real? Like, okay. And typically, your mind thinks that is real. So, okay. So what can I do to mitigate if it happens? Okay. So then it calms me down a little bit. What can I do to prevent it from happening? Okay. So it decreases a little bit, but it's still there. Now, what I have to always remind myself every day is the upside. So if I do succeed, what is the upside? And what is, in a way, the cost of me not doing this? And I guess at that moment in time, okay, I'm fearing that I am, going to crash this kind of like team of 20 at that time, and kind of like, put a dent in the budget of the GoJek, which was quite small, and not even achieve anything. That was my fear. And but then the upside was that if we managed to do it, at that time, initially we were targeting for around 3,000 people, or talents, as we call them, to start and their services being offered. So that means 3,000 people who will be able to earn 80% from their work, versus currently right now, if they are in their current jobs, right, they're only earning 20%. So that upside was so huge for me. It can mean, these people being able to actually build their own business. This means that, these people actually being able to go to back to school, or even like finance their kids to go back to school. So I kind of like then try to focus my impact, right? My thoughts on that upside or impact. And the cost of not doing that, then, is basically this upside is gone. And so I've tried to then, see things and put that into perspective. And so even though the fear is still there, Michelle, the upside is just so much larger that it kind of eclipses the fear, so to quote. And then, so yeah, I just start, moving again.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a really good way to put that. So you're really evaluating the cost of failure, right? Isn't like fine. Yes, you let go, you let down some people, but the upside is you are able to make huge impact on thousands of people's life, and especially I guess in a country is still developing, and they rely on those income to have a better life. So that was your trend of thought, essentially. That's actually very, very interesting. And then, okay, so once you, I guess, you were working on Go Live, were successful, and the CEO essentially pulled you back to the mothership, right? And then, and I think at the time, how many years you actually in the role of leading Go Live?
After 1.5 years, we grew Go Live, and that performance led Nadine to the then CEO to kind of like talk to me and said, hey, we need you in the mothership, because we need to focus on kind of like the core of the GoJek product. And so after around 1.5 years, then I was basically brought back to the mothership. So the Go Live is a part of GoJek, but by no means is it near to the scale of GoJek. I think back then we were doing more than 1 million transactions in GoJek, and for Go Live, it was definitely much smaller than that. So it was really another eye-opening experience. So then when I joined, quote unquote, the mothership, it was actually then a different experience from building something. It's actually a difference of experience of scaling up. I realized that it wasn't that scary anymore. You definitely learn a lot building growth, and I think we managed to reduce churn significantly when I first take that role. But I think back then at GoJek, we managed to grow transactions on average around, I think, 40% month on month. I think in a given month there were tens of thousands of people using our service. But the most impact that I felt, it was really about the service or talents. We call them talents, the service providers that were able to increase their significant by income by at least 40%. That's at the very minimum. And they even built a foundation. They managed to build a foundation, offering scholarships to other service providers and other talents that wanted to pursue the path, because it is then not just kind of like side hustle that you do on the side or a skill that you have, but it's a proper job. So I think that the impact of putting that as a viable job opportunity just opens up to millions of potential Indonesians who can actually or will actually choose that path. Not everyone can be in analytics like you, or not everyone, right, can be in tech or even like in managerial positions, and I think that's that's fact of life, and it's beautiful in its own way. But what's not beautiful about it is that people not being able to see that it is a choice. People thinking that what, if I'm just, let's say, a stylist, this is not going to be something that's really good for my family, so then I'll have to search for other kind of like quote unquote stable jobs and not really investing there. So I think the impact is not just within that. What I like to think is the actual meaning of that impact, which is creating and allowing jobs such as creative jobs like that to be a viable income.
Yeah, it's providing a choice for someone to be freely choosing the path and choice most suitable for that, which I think is a pretty remarkable thing. I like the way you thinking is really about connecting your personal goal with the impact you are making. And I know this is not the first time you're thinking about like the small businesses, and this has been, I would say, a common thread throughout your career, right? And now you're actually working this financial company, and which is really serving like micro businesses. So tell me more about this. How you got started? How you at the time you had this like really amazing job, shining title, and what made you switch?
No, so I was catching up with my mentor, and who is now my co-founder. And he was also from GoJek, so I learned a lot from him. And his name was Rama, and so Rama and I were talking, and I was telling him, and obviously on how I'm feeling right now. I'm happy, but then what? It's not that scary anymore. It's a completely different place. It's more stable. And Rama was saying, you know what? I have this crazy idea. If you're thinking of planning to be scared, and I was like, okay, what was that crazy idea? And he had an idea of, what if farmers can actually become, rich in Indonesia? They're not, right? And what if, farmers is a different job category, and is a very viable job category. And what is then I asked him, so what's the restraint from them getting there? And it turns out that they have to pay for financing that's too expensive for them, which can be up to 50% per month if you think of the interest, right? And that's just crazy amount of exactly APR per year. But they don't have a choice, right? Because they are very constrained in getting financing either way. So Rama then went to one of Indonesia's kind of village, and then he actually gave his own money to around, I think at that time, 50 farmers. And he told them, okay, you know what, I'm just going to charge, I think 3% interest or 4%, I forgot, and you just give me back from your proceeds. And it was such an interesting experiment, because it turns out that the farmers gave him more, and he was like, no, this is I only asked 4%. And then the farmers were like, no, we make quite a lot from this one now because of your financing, and we have profits now. And that's just something. Yeah, I'm like, what, really? Because you have somebody that's really a very kind of like starved for a long time, and just having that really kind gesture. So that means that it's not just kindness, but it's actually true that they're making this a lot better. And so I was really, wow, it's a huge challenge, right? If we were to basically digitize and give financing for the 3 million and more farmers across Java and Indonesia. So I was like, wow, it's huge. It's so huge, and no one has ever gone into this. And so that's why. And so I just I was like, okay, I took the leap, and now we're 3.5 years in my startup now.
Oh, incredible. So what's the current business model like? I know you talk about, I think initially you were supporting farmers, and then later on you decided to pivot and also leverage your previous experience in GoJek. So can you actually share with me the story there?
Yeah, no, so actually, Michelle, this is very funny. We didn't even go to farmers initially, because then we realized the infrastructure just wasn't there. And this is always what happens, right, to the founders initially. Right. You have such a great idea, and because no one else is doing it, you cannot ask the people how they're doing it. And then suddenly when you're in that, you just realize, oh, this is the reason why no one is doing it, right? So then we actually could not go there, so we had to then start from our kind of like closed circle, and see and go to the segment that we can relate to, which was consumers. So we started giving loans to consumers, but then we realized something. 1 year down the road, and this was also one of the key most learnings for me. So 1 year down the road, we realized we could not actually develop a proper machine learning algorithm, just because the data quality in Indonesia is just so bad. There's really a lot of the quality data that can be verified for example, like in the US and Canada, everyone just, is cashless. In Indonesia, like 60% still don't have a bank account. So we were very, very kind of like, going against, a really, really big Goliath, right? And so we realized that we could not make our vision of providing affordable financing at maximum 2%. So then we have built the infrastructure, the lending infrastructure, and etc. But then we could not reach that goal. So then we thought, okay, you know what? We have to just go back to our goal. And by this time, the industry was already very red. There were so many players, 99% of P2P, peer-to-peer institutions that were just consumers. So it also gave us kind of like that push. Okay, we have to move. And at that time,
so
1/3 of my
pivot. Yes.
Exactly.
So it's like first time farmer, it doesn't work, lack of infrastructure, right? Even though there's a very compelling humanitarian case, but you can't get it
Exactly.
done. Second, you go to consumer financing and you realize you don't have the data to actually back it up. Like you can't just giving out people loan at 3% because you don't know how the risk profile are gonna look like, right?
Exactly.
So now what's next? Like what do you do?
So then now we then decided, right, that okay, is there another segment that we can actually get verified data from, or even create the ecosystem where we can get verified data from? And that turns out to be our current model, in which we work with dry goods wholesalers, which accounts for almost 30% of Indonesia's retail transaction. So it's this huge industry here. So we work with their wholesalers to provide loans to their merchants. So in this way, we were able to actually get the verified data from the wholesalers to see whether it matches with the self-reported data that we were getting from the merchants. So in a way, it's kind of like creating that first financial recording for them. And when we did this and we put our model there, it worked really well. We were able to offer at the initial vision that we were aiming for. And, they typically increase their average purchase by 2 times because they were making profit. So it was something that was so exhilarating when we see that. And now we are going even beyond lending. We are going to actually improving the other parts of their operations. So we're kind of like becoming a supply chain solution end to end, which not only caters to order payments, but now to order acquisition, order processing, order fulfillment, and last but not least, customer retention. And it makes me realize, something, Michelle, that, these are really legit businesses that a lot of people just haven't realized that is actually pushing a lot of GMV or money, but they cannot grow because of the fact that they're very manually run.
Right. This is such an ingenious way to solve the problem, right? You don't have the data and you go to the source, right? Hey, seller, because if the merchants is actually doing well and having consumers, having businesses, they will up their wholesalers' purchases, right? Because they need supplies.
Exactly.
And then that is the best way to verify if their business is legit or if their business is growing, right? And then you giving a loan to people who actually in need. But how you work on the customer acquisition, and I think that would be an interesting strategy.
Sure.
If you like to share, because I know a lot of, especially small businesses, when they want to get started, how they can get customer, like that's usually the most difficult things.
Sure. I would love to share. So basically, every industry, right, have different ways of growing. But what I find that in each industry is really important for fast-moving companies is that you have a growth loop, right? So what is a growth loop? So a growth loop is the loop or the ability of one customer bringing in another customer. And so to give you an example, for example, like Slack, right? So, first, maybe they do digital ads. They do yeah, let's say they do digital ads, right? And then they target team leaders, and then these team leaders basically invite their team members. Part of them will convert, and that convert actually will then send out another invite to their team members, or even to more team leaders. So then suddenly you have kind of like the fact that this person is inviting another person, even though indirectly, yeah, so it's not by referral, right? But it's then creating that loop where it just keeps moving, and you just need to invest in the energy to keep that a loop going. So to take the AwanTunai example, so we were targeting small medium enterprises. So obviously first we had to get the words out there. So we did the typical stuff, which is in Indonesia, SMEs are still very manual. So we had to put a sales team on the ground. I went in and sell into the first customer of AwanTunai, that's B2B, yeah, the merchants. So that was me, and acquiring wholesalers. And so once you get these wholesalers, then you have a pool of merchants. This several percent of these merchants will then convert into becoming customers. And what we then realize is that these merchants do not only buy from this one wholesaler; they were buying from multiple wholesalers. So then we asked these merchants, hey, can you recommend us more wholesalers? And then they did. So typically one merchant actually have 2 until 3 kind of like main wholesalers that they go to. So then we were able to have a much easier acquisition to the wholesaler, because it was coming from their own merchants. So then we acquire this wholesaler, in which then we were exposed to another set of customers that, yes, some are overlapping, but a lot were not overlapping with the current wholesaler that we have. So then it just moves on like that. So then that's how we started. First, it's just by knowing what the customer, how to reach the customer. In our case, it was sales. And then second, kind of like figuring out a way in which we can make the acquisition of one customer, in this case my merchant, brings in another merchant. And that's where we put like the growth loop of having these merchants to refer wholesalers.
Oh, that's actually really interesting for this. And then maybe just a general question in terms of how your solution is like different from other companies. And I know there's a lot of companies that focus on B2B, and how your solution different from others in helping like unbanked or underserved small medium-sized enterprises in Indonesia.
Sure. So I think there are 3 different ways in how we differ. So obviously, the first is how we collect data, right? So we prefer to collect data from a verified source or ecosystem or wholesalers, versus just self-reported data, or data that you get from the customers from themselves or from other platforms, which obviously they don't want to give too much of their customer data anyway. So the first one is that we make sure that we get verified data, whereas a lot of other P2Ps out there, they just get self-reported data and they provide the financing. Second, our financing is aimed to really grow the merchants themselves. So that means that we keep track of their purchases, and what that also means is that only use our financing if you want to grow your business, which means that you have to use the financing to purchase something, versus use the financing to versus receiving the financing in cash, in which then you can use for anything that you want, right?
That's right.
So our financing acts sort of like a credit card, quote unquote, for the SMEs, because it's really an inventory financing versus just like some general financing. So that's how we differ. And I think for a lot of players out there, it doesn't make sense. It's easier to just immediately reach the merchants versus having to acquire the wholesalers. But for us, because it was really clear that we want them to grow, we want to get the data that verified that them to grow. So that's our approach. And I think last point is how we are also different from the other P2Ps out there, is that typically because your mission is to just provide financing, typically the other P2Ps, they go deep into this financing without actually taking care of the other aspect as well. And this is an example of when you just want to provide one service and not really seeing the whole customer's life journey. Because when we give financing and we make sure that it's for growth, what happens is that suddenly they were purchasing 2 times the amount of inventory. But then what this means is that now they have issues on delivering this to their customers. They have issues on storing. They have issues on actually processing the increasing orders, right? So then we the third part is that we are then using the data not just for financing, but we're then using the data to also empower other parts of their end-to-end operations. Exactly, because then that means you're growing with the customer, your profit is growing with the customer's growth, right? Versus just having like a very narrow view of how you can get the pie, right? You for me, I think my thinking has always been, how do you grow the pie versus how do you become the best in, how do you get the biggest pie, right? So
nowadays a lot of people want to start a business, and there's an increasing numbers of young entrepreneurs. So do you want to share any advice you have, especially nowadays a lot of people want to do something for them own them, and any tips you want to share with them?
Sure. So basically, I think first and foremost though is to be very clear on why you want to be an entrepreneur, because the path is definitely not easy. The odds are stacked against you, right? I think right now I think only 10% of companies succeed within their first 2 years of operations, right? So it is going to be a very tough but rewarding journey if you actually decide wholeheartedly that whatever happens, you're going to learn from it. And I think that the reason I made or built a company is going to be very different from other entrepreneurs. But what I think differentiates between entrepreneurs who kind of just keep going and versus not is the fact that they enjoy it, right? Doing that. So, and why do they enjoy it? Because they assign like meaning, and meaning is different for everybody. So the first step is really to understand why you want to become an entrepreneur, and whether entrepreneurship is the only path there. Because Michelle, people, some people like stability, some people like prestige, some people like kind of like having structure or hierarchy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that means that it's probably not the best path for you to become an entrepreneur. And I think having that clarity first is very, very important, because then whatever path is gonna whatever challenges in the future, if you know that okay, you make the conscious and aware decision, then you're fine, right? So that would be my first advice. The second advice that I would suggest is on the solution, on the pain points that you actually want to solve and the path to do so. So I think right now, especially in Southeast Asia, everything is about becoming a tech entrepreneur, right? And I think also in a lot of parts of the world. But I think there are definitely problems that would be best to be solved by tech, and other problems that are not necessarily, solve the best way is to solve by tech. Now, kind of like a lot of growing number of companies that claim to be, okay, they're a tech company, but they're actually doing the same thing. For example, like subscriptions for baby diapers or subscriptions for clothes, right? And and they call it a tech company. In my view, that's not a tech company. Part of being very is clear. If you want to be a tech entrepreneur, what's the technical insight? Like what Google did, right? Google was by no means the first search engine, but they realized that the technical insight for them was that if you wanted to get great search results, it was not based on the number of page views that the website got. That was part of it, but not the determining factor. The determining factor was how many other websites kind of link and redirect to that website. And the technology to see page view versus the technology to actually track the links and create an algorithm that compiles all of this fundamental variables is different from just the technology that sees page views. And I think that's what is really different, right? So when you if you want to become a tech entrepreneur, ask yourself, how is tech going to make such a big difference in either the experience or the scale? Just to be very clear. So is this a tech company or is this an operations company with tech? Because those two are very different paths. So I think, and they will have very, very different implications, including what talents you hire, what kind of growth that you are willing to, what kind of experiments, the time frame to run those experiments. It will be very, very different. So that will be second. And I guess the third one is be able to have a way where you can learn from other mistakes and not having to do the same mistakes yourself. That's also, by the way, part of WomenWorks, because the first thing that I do, and I actually got this leaf from Bill Gates, right? So he, somebody asked him, how do you solve tough problems? So he mentioned, right, there were two ways. First, he would search for other people who he would ask, who has done this before? And second, he would then, kind of like try to talk to this person into seeing, what were the actual steps that they took. And what this is useful is then, it just eliminates the need for you to make mistakes and learn from it, right? So you want to just, make mistakes on the things that other people haven't tried. But for the things that people have made mistakes and failed or succeed, right? You want to incorporate that. And that just makes the time to reach that product market fit, that kind of product, much, much smaller. And I think you can see this right in the data, Michelle. It took Alibaba, 12 years or to get there, right? It took Airbnb, if you read it, their biography, took a long way, right? Until they finally joined YC. And, they kind of have this mentor, other entrepreneurs that tell them, hey, you need to focus on this versus this, right? I think, that was where Paul Graham's ramen profitability even came out. So I think learning from others and not making the same mistakes to make sure that your time in building your own solution and company, I think that would be my top 3 advice.
That's awesome.
Sorry if it's a bit long.
No, it's actually really good. So, we need to stand on the shoulder of giants, right? Why we have to do something really being validated. Like, you don't have to, right? Just take it and follow. It's
exactly.
Really...
So what's next, I guess, for me is, I get I realized, from doing GoJek, from Go Life, and from this, now, hence, I'm working on WomenWorks. So WomenWorks is a platform where women are connected to people, whether they be female or male, that can actually help you achieve your goals. So in a way, it's like building these meaningful connections. Because when I took a look at my journey in life, it was always because, I was luckily part of a community that knows other people, or I was part of a company where the people were there are just so smart that they, become future industrial leaders. And then because I was there, then I knew them, and then they reached out to me. It was also, because of the people around me that I managed to get really valuable feedback. One of the things, when I was contemplating on exiting GoJek, at that time, there were multiple options. Obviously, when word got out, right, that you were kind of like quote unquote looking or accepting, exploring opportunities. And I remember I was talking to my then CEO, and he said this very kind of like quick 5 minutes that completely changed my whole approach. He says that, Windy, you've always been asking me whether there is a right path, and I think that the right path for everyone is different, and there's no right path. But then for you, I don't think corporate is the right path. And at that time, I was actually potentially thinking of accepting a very interesting offer from a corporate. So that conversation, even though it was just 5 minutes, changed my whole life up until now, right? As you mentioned, right? I managed to build AwanTunai, got inducted, but if I took a look back, would I make that decision if it were not for the conversation? Maybe not, right? So I want to create that opportunity of people to people, especially to females, to build meaningful connections that, regardless of where you go to school, where you go to college, who your friends are, you're able to reach out to more people that are able to help you achieve your goals, whether professionally, hopefully, whether it be, to learn what is it exactly that as an outsider you need to get into the tech industry, for example. Or if you're already a working mom, are there really tips that you can do to have a proper career while still being a good mom? And so HBR did a research, right? And basically 71% of leaders are male, and only 29% are female in the top positions. But when they did, what was interesting to me was that they then created like a list of leadership qualities, and women just basically rank higher than men in most of them. So what is the difference, right? And you know what? One of the quote, one of the reasons that they mentioned was just it's really hard for women to build that support system at work. And I think, yeah, it makes sense, right? Because you see very few people or very few female at leadership positions. But it doesn't mean that it is impossible. But just because you're constrained into one company, you think it's impossible. So I just kind of want to open this, right? As many women as possible, and get men to be part of the movement in actually getting more leaders. Because if you have more leaders at work, I fundamentally believe you have happier and better employees, and that means you have happier and better families, and that means you have a happier and better nation. So that's, I think, what's next for me. Hopefully, we can collaborate further on that, because I think this platform is also great that you're creating, Analytics by Design.
When you shared with me the HBS number, I also saw something really interesting. They run the Fortune 500 performance, in essentially financial performance and the ROI, return on investment.
Yeah.
And the women-run businesses actually has a higher return than men-run businesses. And then, of course, I'm not saying any superiority here, but There's a statistical evidence to prove if giving women more opportunity lead to a better financial result, right? What's a better way, to end this conversation? And I feel like I learned a lot, and I'm super excited. I'm definitely going to contact you, just to get to understand more about WomenWorks, and then I want to help you as much as we can as a community as well. So love to keep in touch.
Yeah. Yes, of course, Michelle. And I think, it was, really interesting as well, right? Because we met in Harvard, HBR, right? I think how many years ago? Yeah, it was really, really crazy.
Almost 10 years ago.
Almost 10 years ago, right? And I think, this is just an example, I'm able to reach out to you and vice versa because we met there. But not everyone can go to Harvard, right? And, and have that. But they have the same talent, they have the same capabilities like we do. And I think, I mean, it's just a case in point in which we were lucky to know each other back then. And I think, so excited to show and expand this opportunity to many more people.
Definitely. I'm definitely in this with you. Thank you so much, Wendy. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really learned a lot.
Likewise, Michelle.
So I really hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I do. If you do like us, and please don't forget to click on the thumbs up and subscribe so you will get a notification when we have updates. And of course, if you like to interact with us on social media, we are available on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and you can find us online at a little by design. So I will see you next time.